Our 12 News Politics talk show, Sunday Square Off, will be returning to its regular 8 a.m. time slot next weekend. The show's been on a hiatus for the last few months as we continue to adapt to the coronavirus pandemic. Right now, thousands of Arizonans are having a tough time getting their jobless benefits. Sunday Square Off host Brahm Resnik joins us with how crooks are messing with the system. Take a look.
Thousands of Arizonans who are supposed to get unemployment benefits aren't. And now thousands who shouldn't be getting the benefits are. The pandemic has overwhelmed Arizona's system for paying out benefits. A new system, new employees explaining it, and crooks are trying to steal those benefits. The Arizona Republic's Ryan Randazzo has closely covered our unemployment insurance system for months now. He joins us to explain what is going on. So Ryan, how serious is this fraud problem?
It's pretty darn serious if you're someone who's waiting to get your benefits and it's being held up while DES has to investigate whether it's a fraudulent claim or not. There's probably 100,000 people in the state who qualify for benefits, have done everything right, but their money is being held up while DES verifies that they're not a fraudster. So it's very serious on that end. What we don't know from DES is how much money the state has lost to fraud. In Seattle, or Washington State rather, the officials there estimate they've lost close to $1 billion in state and federal funds to fraud. And we haven't heard what that figure might be in Arizona.
And this is going on around the country. Has Arizona been hit by anything like this before?
Well, unemployment fraud is a pretty popular crime even before the pandemic because it's very simple to apply for unemployment benefits. And so unsophisticated criminals can apply for benefits either for themselves when they don't actually qualify or haven't been fired, or they can apply for, a friend or relative and get the money that's sent to them. So it happens all the time, and DES is constantly prosecuting individuals for fraud. But when the pandemic struck and Congress added $600 a week to people's benefits across the country, more sophisticated fraud rings started targeting the United States. They went first at places that pay more per week. So Arizona has the second lowest weekly payment in the country. There's another $600 on top of what Arizonans get, but the fraud rings really targeted states like Washington, where you get $1,200 a week now with the federal benefits. But it seems that they have begun to target all the other states as well, and Arizona is now suffering from that.
And explain how this fraud typically works, how we see it.
Well, it's interesting because we only really know it's happening because so many people are getting these debit cards with unemployment benefits that didn't apply for them. So people that did not lose their job go to their mailbox one day and there's a debit card with $800 or $1,500 on it, and they didn't apply. And they've begun calling the media and obviously calling DES or their employer to figure out what's going on. And that's really how we got wind that this was so widespread. I probably got half a dozen people contacted me in the last week asking what to do because they got these cards and they didn't apply for unemployment benefits. So what's happening is their identity was stolen somewhere through a breach at a big retail store or something in the past decade. And the people that have that data are now just applying by the thousands for jobless benefits across the country with all the IDs they have, hoping that somewhere, the unemployment departments will slip up and pay the wrong person. And we're only figuring this out because it's the unsophisticated criminals that haven't set up direct deposit for these. And actually, the card gets mailed to the actual person whose identity is being stolen. So we're just seeing a small sliver of this, and we're seeing the failed attempts. That's how we know what's going on, is because the failed attempts are getting attention.
And what we're seeing are people receiving DES debit cards. You do get a card, a plastic card, that is already loaded with cash. It could be $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 or more. Should folks who get those cards try to use them?
No, you should not. Probably you would not get prosecuted if they can prove that someone else applied for those benefits in your name. But if you did not apply for unemployment benefits, you should not spend that money. You will definitely be asked to pay it back at some point when DES runs this all to ground. So the best thing to do is to report it to DES. You can report fraud online at the DES website, and I would not spend that money if you didn't apply for it.
And there's another problem this creates, which is actually understanding how many people are actually unemployed, because these fraudsters might show up in the jobless claims. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, the state reports weekly jobless claims on Mondays, and the figures have been just whipsawing up and down, and then they get revised a week later. But just to put it simply, the numbers don't make sense. There's about 250,000 people who continue to get jobless benefits every week, and then another 160, 170,000 who are getting benefits added by Congress. But there's way more initial applications coming in. I mean, almost 200,000 applications a week for benefits, and that just doesn't make sense. So I'm curious as to whether the fraud is so rampant that it's actually skewing the weekly figures that economists use to try and gauge the health of the state's economy.
And so what do we know about how DES is fighting this?
Well, they've hired investigators. They need way more than they do in regular times. You know, a busy week for DES used to be 4,000 applications and maybe paying $3 million in benefits. Now they're seeing, 100,000 applications a week, and, they've paid $5 billion in the past few months. So they are definitely overloaded, and they needed to beef up their staff. So they've hired people. They've begun to try and track these things forensically through just data analysis on where the applications are coming from. And I'll share an example. I spoke with one man this week who was getting unemployment benefits. He qualified. He's been getting them for weeks, and then all of a sudden his payment stopped. And he tried to call DES, which is very challenging to get through. And when he finally reached a employee at DES, they told him that his money had been held up because he filed a weekly claim from a California phone number. Now, this man previously lived in California. He's lived in Arizona for several years. He applied for benefits using his phone, which has a California number still, and DES approved it. But somewhere along the line, an investigator or a software program they're using flagged his account. And so now he hasn't been paid in 2 weeks because DES needs to clear his account and make sure that he's not committing fraud. I spoke with the man. I trust he's not committing fraud because it would not be smart to call the media and report that. But he's just one example of someone who, is being harmed by the fraud that's being committed.
All right. Ryan Randazzo, keep up the great reporting, and thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
All right, thanks a lot, Brahm. And don't forget, Sunday Square Off is back for a full half hour every week starting next Sunday at 8 a.m. right here on 12 News.